In the criminal underworld, violence and murder are at the crux of power wielded by organized crime. These criminal organizations have multiple members who are willing and able to commit murder whenever it is deemed necessary. However, there are some men who become so skilled at the job of murder that their crimes become legendary. These killers are calculating, prolific, efficient, and know how to send a message. These killers are organized crime's top hitmen. Number 8. Frank, the German, Schweihs. Francis John Schweihs was born on February 7, 1932 in Chicago, Illinois. While his mother was Sicilian, his father, also named Francis, was of German descent, which was the reason he received the nickname Frank the German later in life. Schweihs began a life of crime as an adolescent, and by the time he reached 18, he was already a known commodity to law enforcement in his neighborhood. He would appear on the wider underworld radar for the first time in the 1960s when some alleged that he worked directly for bosses Tony Joe Batters Accardo and Sam Momo Giancana. Throughout his life, Frank the German would work with a number of different capos, bouncing around from crew to crew. Chinatown crew captain Angelo the Hook La Pietra, along with Grand Avenue captain Joey the Clown Lombardo, and outfit powerhouse Felix Milwaukee Phil Aldericio, all used Schweihs for everything from collecting juice money to breaking legs. It wasn't long before Schweihs was asked to commit murder. By 1962, Schweihs had already been arrested 32 times in just 32 years of life. His arrests early on varied from theft and burglary all the way up to murder. On one of his earliest assignments, he and outfit gangster Joey the Clown Lombardo were tasked with the murder of Richard W. Hoff, a part owner of the Crossroads Motel and a man with long-time ties to organized crime. The hit was interrupted by the Cook County Sheriff's Department. The officer on the scene, John J. Flood, would later tell a crowded courtroom how he spotted Schweihs sneaking around the corner of the building, and he then saw a parked car nearby with a man and a woman in the front seat. Flood testified that he sensed that the couple in the car were in danger and about to become the victims of some violent act. At the same time, Flood told how he saw a second car parked a few car lengths away with a man in the driver's seat slouched down behind the steering wheel in an apparent attempt to hide from view. In the brief exchange that followed, Flood ordered Schweihs to produce some identification while at the same time gesturing to the man in the parked car to get out and come forward. The man in the parked car, later believed to be Joey the Clown Lombardo, attempted to run down the officer while escaping. Later on at the police station, Schweihs failed to identify Lombardo as the man in the car and refused to cooperate with law enforcement. Schweihs was not charged by police and walked away from the incident with the reputation of a stand-up guy. Schweihs was also suspected in another murder in 1962. This time, the victim would be his girlfriend, 18-year-old manicurist Eugenia Papas. Her body was found floating in the Chicago River. She had been shot through the heart, according to police, while sitting in the passenger seat of a car. Chicago detective Richard Kane, who led the investigation, was himself secretly on the mob's payroll. Schweihs was questioned in the murder, but never charged. Schweihs was also possibly involved in a conspiracy of sorts that same year, as he had been suspected of involvement in the controversial death of Marilyn Monroe. Schweihs often worked outside of Chicago, so traveling for a hit was nothing new. It is alleged that outfit boss Sam Giancana ordered Schweihs to finish off Monroe and make it look like a drug overdose. Whether this is true or not, Monroe's death on August 4, 1962 was never officially ruled a suicide due to lack of evidence. Many investigators believe Monroe was murdered by the Chicago outfit because of her connections to the Kennedy family and Chicago mob boss Sam Momo Giancana. Throughout the remainder of the 1960s, Schweihs would quietly become one of the outfit's go-to hitmen. As the 1960s rolled into the 1970s, Schweihs continued building a reputation as the baddest man in Chicago. In December of 1973, the same detective that may have shielded Schweihs in 1962 ended up being on the wrong end of Schweihs' gun. Richard Kane, who by now was disgraced and fired for his outfit affiliation in 1964, went to work directly for Giancana and the outfit. He would go to prison on perjury and accessory to bank robbery charges in 1968. After he was released on parole, Kane made frequent trips to and from Mexico as Sam Giancana's courier and financial advisor, while simultaneously working as an FBI informant for Agent William F. Romer. Kane was allegedly muscling out his rivals in the outfit by revealing their operations to federal authorities. Likely due to playing both sides, Kane was killed by a masked gunman in Rose's Sandwich Shop in Chicago on December 20, 1973. Schweihs was suspected of involvement in the murder. Less than a year later, Schweihs would be suspected in another murder, this time of a federal witness, when Daniel Seifert was gunned down outside his place of business in the Bensonville area of Chicago, Illinois. Daniel Seifert was scheduled to testify against Teamster consultant Alan Dorfman, as well as outfit capo Joey the Clown Lombardo and outfit soldier Tony Spilotro, along with several others, in a fraud case involving loans from the Teamster Pension Fund. After the murder, the case essentially collapsed, with all defendants either being acquitted or dropped from the indictment. Coincidentally, Schweihs would be suspected of possible involvement in the murder of Dorfman 8 years later. In the late 70s and early 80s, Schweihs would assist Angelo the Hook La Pietra, Tony Spilotro, and the Chicago outfit in skimming millions of dollars from Vegas casinos. During this time, Schweihs also handled a number of extortion rackets for La Pietra in the city of Chicago. His main skill, however, was still killing people, and he would continue to handle a number of hits for the outfit. In 1976, the outfit's Hollywood connection, John Handsome Johnny Roselli, was found by a fisherman in a 55-gallon steel drum floating in Dunfermline Bay near Miami, Florida. An autopsy revealed that Roselli died of asphyxiation. Federal investigators suggested he may have been killed by Chicago mobsters for keeping an unfair share of the mob's gambling interests in Las Vegas. However, mob sources indicate that Roselli had reportedly become an embarrassment to the outfit due to his testimony before the church committee on the assassination of JFK, among other things. This led the outfit consigliere and de facto boss Tony Accardo to order his murder. Top outfit hitman Frank Schweihs allegedly carried out the hit. By this time, Schweihs had a reputation that terrified average citizens, law enforcement, and even his fellow mobsters. It is alleged that Schweihs was sent to kill Los Angeles soldier and outfit associate Jimmy the Weasel Fratiano. The story goes that when Fratiano saw Schweihs in an LA parking lot, Fratiano fled the area and immediately called the FBI in fear for his life. Michael Spilotro allegedly showed Schweihs' picture to his daughter and told her if she were ever to see this man around her or the house to immediately call police. Schweihs would continue his murderous ways throughout the early 1980s. In 1985, former Giancana associate Chucky English was looking to reestablish himself within the Chicago mob. Joey Doves Iupa and Jackie Cerrone were likely to be convicted and sent to prison for skimming profits from Las Vegas casinos, leaving a power vacuum at the top of the Chicago outfit. It was rumored that English was looking to fill the void. Instead, he would be killed gangland style at the age of 70 years old. Frank Schweihs was suspected of committing the murder. Another hit Schweihs was suspected of being involved in was the murders of Tony the Ant Spilotro and his brother Michael. Like many facets of Schweihs' life, it is not known for certain if he was one of the killers or had a peripheral role. Rumor had it that the bosses in Chicago were calling in the brothers for a promotion. Tony Spilotro was to be made a captain, and his brother Michael was to become a made man. This turned out to be a setup, and Anthony Spilotro and his brother Michael disappeared on June 14, 1986, after they drove away together from Michael's Oak Park home. They were found buried in a cornfield in the Willow Slough Preserve near Enos, Indiana, a week later. Schweihs' run would be stalled in 1989 when he was locked up on charges related to extortion. While locked up, he was in the same prison with outfit turncoat Gerald Scarpelli. Scarpelli would commit suicide under suspicious circumstances, as he was found with his hands and feet tied while suffocating with a plastic bag over his head. Again, suspicions were on Schweihs. However, there is no evidence that the two ever crossed paths, and Schweihs being the killer is just conjecture. Schweihs would again be released from prison and slipped under the radar until he was rolled up in the family secrets investigation. Even in semi-retirement, he still found time to handle extortion rackets for the outfit. During this time, Schweihs was in charge of collecting $12,000 a month from the national Onliang Chinese merchants, also known simply as Onliang, throughout the 1990s. Once indictments came down from the family secrets investigation, Schweihs would go on the lam in April of 2005, before finally being arrested in Kentucky in December of that same year. His trial would be severed from the others due to poor health, and he would die of cancer in 2008. By the end of his career, it is alleged that Schweihs murdered upwards of 80 people, including women, which is where many mobsters drew the line. Other murders Schweihs may have been involved in include Joe Testa, Angelo Boscarino, Patsy Riccardi, Donald Aronow, and porno distributor Paul Gonski, who happened to be gunned down on Schweihs' property. It is also believed that Schweihs was involved in or had direct knowledge of the murders of top outfit gangsters and associates such as Sam Momo Giancana, Charles Chucky Nicoletti, and Mad Sam DiStefano. For being a prolific hitman, Frank the German Schweihs kept a low profile while still having one of the most fearsome reputations in the Chicago underworld. It is perhaps because of this fearsome reputation that witnesses and informants refused to testify against him, and thus the reason he rarely saw the inside of a prison cell until late in life. He was the boogeyman of Chicago. Even the most seasoned killers feared him. He is without a doubt one of the top hitmen in the history of organized crime.